Hello everyone and welcome back to our Unreal series. Um, in this unit we will be learning about something that is truly amazing in Unreal, and that is the Kismet visual scripting mechanism and tool sets that Unreal presents us to create stunning gameplay events and activities within the Unreal Engine. So from any interactivity that you see in your levels in Unreal and in Unreal-based games, they are done through scripts, and you can use Unreal Kismet as one of the most efficient and probably one of the easiest ways of creating those interactivity into your levels. And we will learn about Kismet today. To show you how you can use Kismet, basically Kismet sequences are done mostly through things that are called sequences of events and actions. Events are like triggers that ignite the actions, and so you have a bunch of different event and actions that you can set up. Um, Events are basically actor-based events, AI-based events, HUDs, input events, and a whole bunch of different things that start and trigger something. And those things that you can trigger are basically actions, actor-based actions, again, AI actions, level actions, input actions, and so on and so forth. And we'll see how we can use these in our levels. And what you see here is the Unreal Kismet. And the way to get to your Kismet is to click on this little Unreal Kismet editor icon, and from the toolbar, and when you click on it, the Unreal Kismet opens up. Alright, now just to start and see how the Unreal Kismet works, let me just set up a real quick example here. And here I want to just turn on a light. And so let's go, and I created this basic levels, basically a floor and rubber box in the middle, and that I created with additive geometry. And I'm going to open the content browser. And in the content browser, what I've already done is I already opened the Unreal Kismet content package from chapter 9 of the CD that comes with, or the DVD that comes with the first volume of the book. I already done that. So what I'm going to do right here is that I'm going to go to the actor classes. I'm not going to use the package right now. And the actor classes, I'm going to go to the directional lights, and I'm going to bring one directional light here and add the directional light to my level. And then I'm going to double click on the light, and I'm going to change the brightness from 1 to a smaller value, about 26, so that I would be able to see the level. And then click on the build light, uncheck the light mask, and build the lighting, and then I can play this level. So basically in this level I see that there's nothing in there. And let me move this object a bit out and then create the geometry. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going now back to my content browser. So click on the content browser, click on actor classes, click on lights, and I will bring a point light that is toggleable. So left click on point light toggleable, and then right click in the perspective view and add a point light toggleable to your level. And to see this light, I'm going to change its color. So go to the light component, and on the light color, double click on the white band, and I'm going to make it an orange looking light. Okay, and then close the properties. So here I have my light, and it is toggled on. Double click on it, and then uncheck the enabled light checkbox. That turns the light off, as you see here. So if I build the lighting, undo the light mask, and then play this level, you will see that the light is off and it will not turn on. So to turn this light on, I would have to write a Kismet sequence, and in the Kismet sequence, I would tell the sequence to turn the light on when something happens. So that thing would be a trigger. So for now, I minimize my content browser, and I right-click in my level, and I add an actor from the pop-up menu. I add a trigger, and this would be my trigger that will turn the light on. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to double click on this trigger or press F4, and then from the display I'm going to change the draw scale of this trigger and make it a bit smaller, and then I'm going to uncheck the hidden property. This makes the trigger visible in my level. So if I play my level now, you see the trigger is now visible. I can see it, right? So if I check this hidden and I play the level, I will not be able to see my trigger in the level. Okay, so for now, let's just uncheck the hidden and let's see the trigger visible. And then, so the trigger is added to my level. Now I can see it, but nothing will happen. One of the ways to set this sequence up is to check and left click and select your trigger in your perspective viewport. While the trigger is selected, left click on the Kismet editor to open the editor. So my trigger is selected and my Unreal editor is open. If you right click in your Unreal editor in the gray area, you would see all the sequence events and actions that you had, but now you have a new event using trigger 2. If you move your mouse over this new event using trigger, which is trigger 2 that's in this level, you can use and choose from several different options. Touch basically adds an event. If this trigger is touched, destroy ignites your events if the trigger is destroyed, and so on and so forth. So for now, we use a touch event. So if you add a new event using your trigger, you'd see touching this trigger, you would see that this is created. This event is created. You will have several properties. If you expand the touch type, you can have different types. For example, here it's basically a pawn type. If you expand your sequence, you'd see that you can have some sequence event touch additional properties. And under the sequence event, you will have maximum trigger count that you could set up. If your maximum trigger count is set up as 1, when you touch this trigger once, whatever actions you want will happen. And if you touch it over and over, nothing will happen anymore. Now I could add a large number for my maximum trigger count, so I can touch it over 1,000 times and it happens, or it ignites the events, or it triggers the events, but not more than that. But if you make this maximum trigger to 0, then you won't have any maximum trigger count. So whenever you touch this trigger, it ignites your events. So there won't be any maximum counts for it. You will have the trigger delay, you would have it enabled, and so on and so forth. So let's close this event. Now I have set up my touch event, and when I touch this event, something would happen, but here nothing will happen because nothing is connected to it. Now what I want here is to turn the light on, which is a toggle action. So I need to right click, go to actions, and go to toggle, and then click on the toggle action. So now what happens is that this toggle would be activated if I connect it to my trigger. So I need to move the turn on to touched and the turn off to untouched. So this sequence does this. When I touch the trigger, a toggle would turn on, and when I move out of the trigger and untouch the trigger, the toggle would turn off. The toggle has no target so far. So in order to turn the light on, I need to click on the light in my perspective viewport, and then right click under the toggle action and add a new variable using point light toggleable one, and then connect the target of my toggle to the point light. So here what is happening is that when I touch the trigger, it turns the toggle on, which is connected to the light, so it turns the light on. So if you can think of this as that the trigger is like the light switch. The toggle is like the light switch that you turn on and off. And this wire between the target and the point light variable is the actual wiring that wires your light switch to your light. Here it's invisibly in the Unreal. So now this trigger is set up. Now if I play this level, if I go and touch the trigger, it turns the light on, and when I untouch it, it turns the light off. When I touch the trigger, the light turns on. Untouch the trigger, the light turns off. Touch, untouch, touch, untouch, on, off. So this is good. Now, it doesn't play a sound, so I won't be able to hear anything. Now, if you wanted to have a sound set up when you touch this trigger and turn the light on and off, you can set that up, and I'll show you how to do that. Now, fortunately, your content browser, if you open the Chapter 9 Kismet content from your DVD, or you copy it into your hard drive and open it up, you would see that the content comes up, and under the content sound cues folder, there are two sound cues, sound cue light off and sound cue light on. If you double click on them, your content browser will play them for you. Okay, so in order to have a sound also activated in your level when you touch the trigger, you can click on the sound cue light on, and then right click in the gray area above your toggle and click on sound play sound. And then under the sequence action play sound, the play sound option, add from the content browser your sound on. So in the content browser, left click on the sound cue light on. Back in the Kismet play sound property, use the content browser object, and then connect the play to the touched property here. Right click below the toggle, go to new action, go to sound, and choose play sound. For this new play sound, go back to your content browser, select the light off, and then add it to the sound of play sound property and play it when the trigger is untouched. So now you touch the trigger, the light turns on and the light on sound will play. When you untouch the trigger, the light turns off and the light off sound cue will be played. Now if I minimize everything, then I'll play my level one more time. When I touch the trigger and I untouch it, the light on and light off will sound. Okay. So here basically I showed you how to set up your basic put the trigger in your level, use a touch event based on your trigger, and then wire it to several events by wiring its touch and untouch outputs into your levels. Now, before I move forward, I'd like, just now that we have this simple sequence set up, I'd like to talk a little bit about the taxonomy of your Kismet sequences, basically. So as I said, everything in Kismet, almost everything in Kismet, happens in a series of events and actions. Events are triggers that start actions. So it's like an explosive example, events are basically the triggers that trigger the explosions, and the actions are the actual explosions. And you need to wire them properly for the proper sequences to play the way you want them to play. This is basically the visual scripting in Kismet. And so basically our events are these hexagonal items that you see, and your actions are basically these rectangles. Each of the actions will have one or more inputs. For example, the play sound will have a play input and a stop input. Toggle will have a turn on, turn off, and toggle input. And then outputs that are these squares to the right of each action. And you can wire them one after another in a sequence of actions by connecting each output to the input of the next action. And this way they will happen in sequences. If you don't wire them in sequences, they will happen in parallel. So for example, in this case, when I connect the output of the touch to both play sound and the turn on of the toggle, when the trigger is touched, both toggle will turn on at the same time as the sound will play. So these will play in parallel. At the bottom of each of these actions, you will have several items which are called the object variables that can be connected to them so that the action will happen upon those variables. So in this case, this light toggleable variable, object variable, is connected to the target of the toggle. So the turn on will affect the target object variable here. So basically, your variables are also colored based on the type. For example, booleans are red, integers are green, objects and strings are pink, and so on and so forth. And in your textbook, you will have all those properties that you could refer to. Each of these items within your Kismet editor will have some properties that are showing at the bottom here, and you will be able to see those properties. And you can add targets, you can add contents to the properties of your objects from the content browser, like for example the sound cue that we added to the play sound here, and we added the sound off and sound on to these two different play sounds. Or you can create object variables from your content browser in your Kismet editor. Okay, so with this, let's move on and let me show you how you can now manipulate material instances. If you remember from when we were talking about materials, when we created materials, and then in some materials we added some properties and some parameters, basically. Like for example, for the water material that we created, we added the watercolor as a property, and then those properties, those parameters, if you use a material instance, you can change those parameters either manually within the material instance editor from your content browser. So for example, if you go to material instances, like for example this matte red blue pulsar, which would be a material which will have a material instance off of it. This is matte red blue pulsar instance, as you see here. If you double click on it, the material instance editor will open up, and then you can change properties. For example, in this case, the red blue parameter is the property that governs the blueness or the redness of this light. So if it's 0, the light pulses red. If it's 1, the light pulses blue. So we have a red-blue parameter in this instance. I can use this either manually right here, or I can use this as a actual material instance within my Kismet to change it. So let's do that. I will right-click here and create a sphere with 25 radius and make it about 5 extrapolations from my sphere here, and then I will add a geometry basically here. to my level. Okay. Now I'm going to move this somewhere that I can see it and that it's visible. Okay. Okay, now I built this and it is visible in my level. And so if I play my level here, you see that this geometry that I added to my level is basically a square that pulses a blue line. Let me rebuild the lighting. Okay, so how can I now change this line, this object, to change its pulsation from blue to red? Open your content browser and double click on the object, and you see that red blue content is basically 1 here, which makes the light um, shine blue because its red blue parameter is 1. Now I need to set up another trigger here to basically change this light. So just go to your content browser and then go to actually right click in your level and add an actor and add a trigger here. So I have a new trigger in my level, and if I play my level, you'll see that the trigger is now in. Oh, I can't see it because it's hidden. Go to the properties and uncheck the hidden icon setting, and when you play your level, now you see the original trigger that I added. I won't do anything with it. Now I go, and whenever I touch this trigger, nothing happens. And so basically, because it's not set up in a sequence. To set this up in a sequence, select it from your content browser, from your perspective viewport one more time. Open your Kismet. And now I would just basically scroll down, go somewhere else in my Kismet editor, and right click in the gray area and add a new event. But this time I add a used event. Now, the used event, the difference between used event and touch event is that the touch event starts when you touch the event, the trigger. Use event that I set it up with this trigger now. Okay, this use event now will initiate sequences when I press the E key, which is the key that in Unreal is used for as using objects. And so if you open it up, you can check the aim to interact, and this way you would, if this property aim to interact is checked, then your player would have to look at this trigger and press E to turn it on. If you uncheck it, then you can press E when you're in the proximity of that event, basically when you are 128 units away from this trigger to start your events and actions. Then go to the sequence event and change its maximum trigger count back to 0. This way you can use this event trigger for several times. Now what do I want to happen? I want to basically change the scalar parameter of an material when I use this trigger. So right click to the right of your used event and go to the action, go to the materials and set scalar parameter of your materials. Okay, so when you add this action, this basically sets a scalar parameter of a material instance. Okay, now what material instance is the material instance that you would have to set it up, and what parameter is the parameter that you would have to set it up here. So to set this material instance up, go to your content browser, go to content browser, click on the material instance red blue pulsar, and back in the Kismet editor, assign that material instance from the content browser to the set scalar parameter action here. So what happens here is that now whatever you do will set this material instance parameters. Now which parameter do you want to set up? Okay, so double click in your content browser on the material instance, and then under the material parameters group you would see one scalar parameter value that's called red blue. So go back to your content browser, click on the set scalar parameter, and under the properties, under the parameter name, type in red blue. If that material or that text or that parameter exists, then you would see that your Kismet would automatically change the lowercase and uppercase of what you typed there. Okay, and then I want to set this property from 1 to 0 because it's pulsing blue because it's 1 in the level, and I change it to 0 so it would pulse red, and connect this set scalar parameter input to the used of your trigger. Okay, now let's play this level and see what happens. Okay, now as you see here, the light is pulsing blue, and when I move close to the trigger and press E, it tells me that the scalar parameter has been set, and then it pulses red. Okay, now what I want to happen is that I want this to pulse red for a few seconds and then turn back to blue. But what happened when I exited the level or the gameplay, the material stayed red. So what should I do? I can use this basically I can use a Kismet to reset every parameter that I have in my level, basically when the level starts up. So if you right click and go to the events, under the events you see several kinds of events, and one of the events is basically game ended or level loaded. If you click on the level loaded, you will see that this level loaded will have a series of sequences initiated when the level is loaded or visible, or it's the beginning of the level, or if it's the level is reset. So for example, if you wanted to reset the locations of all the players and things, you can do that, and so forth. So here I want to reset the value of my scalar parameter red blue of my material instance red blue pulsar from 0 back to 1, so it shines blue when the level starts up. So left click on the set scalar parameter, copy it so that you would have all your material instances and the parameters already set up, and change its scalar value to 1 and connect the level loaded and visible to this new set scalar parameter. Now if you play your level, when the level is loaded, your material shines blue because the parameter is set to 1, and when you press E for the trigger, your material turns red. Okay? If you restart the game, when the level is loaded and visible, again your material is blue, and when you press E on your trigger, your material turns red. Alright? Now if I wanted to have the material red for a few seconds, basically as a delay, and then turn back to blue, you could right click on new action, go to miscellaneous actions, choose a delay option, change the delay duration, let's say to 5 seconds, connect the output of scalar parameter, the first scalar parameter that turns the light to red, to the start of the delay, and after the delay is finished, connect it to the second scalar parameter that turns the material back to blue. Now if I play this level, the material starts blue when the level is loaded and start up. When I press E, the material turns red. It stays red for 5 seconds, and after 5 seconds is elapsed, the set scalar parameter, the second set scalar parameter, which was the red, or turning the light to red, to blue, would turn on and turns the light back to blue. So 5 seconds red, blue. Press E, 5 seconds red, delay, turn to blue. So here's basically my sequence of actions that I programmed within Kismet.